This is the $100 billion Button, a series on the science of money and well-being. It is produced by Sycamore, an app to learn and practice well-being. Visit us at trysycamore.com. Last episode, we took time to understand what we really mean when we talk about well-being, discussing the difference between experienced well-being, which we'll also call happiness, and evaluative well-being, which we'll also call life satisfaction. We then considered the various research methodologies that can be used to understand the relationship between money and well-being. In this episode, we have the pieces to start exploring what the research suggests about money and these two indicators of well-being. We're going to start by diving into the observational studies. As a reminder, observational studies reveal correlation, not causation. We have to keep this in mind, since there may well be other factors that are doing the work to impact well-being besides money. I will therefore be careful with language, sticking to phrases like associated with and correlated with. One of the first major studies in this space came from a pair of influential researchers, Danny Kahneman and Angus Deaton, in 2010. Kahneman, a cognitive scientist, won the Nobel Prize in economics and wrote the popular book Thinking, Fast and Slow. Deaton, an economist, also separately won the Nobel Prize in economics. In other words, two heavyweight academics. Kahneman and Deaton's study relied on a survey of 450,000 Americans, which asked about household income level and measured both experienced and evaluative well-being. For experienced well-being, they relied on measures of positive affect and negative affect. For evaluative well-being, they made use of Cantrell's ladder scale that we mentioned in the previous episode, ranking their overall life on a scale of 0 to 10, using rungs of a ladder as a metaphor. When this study came out, its findings garnered a lot of headlines. Let's start with evaluative well-being, or life satisfaction. Here the researchers found that life evaluation rose with income across the range of data they had. In other words, more income translated to more life satisfaction. However, this effect slowed down as people earned higher and higher incomes. So for life satisfaction, the story appeared to be that more money is more life satisfaction, but that there is a decreasing return on what the incremental dollar of income will do for you. Let's now look at experienced well-being, or happiness. This is where Kahneman and Deaton generated the most headlines, because they concluded that emotional well-being also rises with household income, but only up to $75,000, after which its effect plateaus, and thus disappears. This cutoff was true for both positive and negative affect. Positive affect stopped increasing and negative affect stopped decreasing. It's worth noting that this $75,000 was just the average of the $60,000 to $90,000 income bracket where the happiness increases ended, so there was nothing special about exactly $75,000. And for those wondering, after taking into account inflation since 2010, that range is between $105,000 and $125,000 in household income in today's dollars. Nothing trivial, but certainly not millions and millions of dollars. At the time, this represented a stark rebuke to many people's assumptions about money. Kahneman and Deaton's proposed explanation was that once your basic needs are met, money doesn't buy you any more experienced well-being. If you're earning six figures, you're likely able to afford the parts of your life that matter most. Things like nice stable housing, sufficient healthy food, ample health care, and time for leisure and entertainment. After the point where you're able to access those things, the effect of money on your moment-to-moment existence fades. While more money can mean you buy more pretty things, those don't appear to reliably improve your happiness. The only thing you are gaining is evaluative well-being, or feeling good about your life as a whole when you take a step back. For a while, this was our best understanding of how money affects well-being. Now let's fast forward a decade to 2021, when an upstart researcher named Matt Killingsworth released another headline-grabbing study that directly challenged the work of Kahneman and Deaton. In the world of academia, it was high drama. Killingsworth contended that Kahneman and Deaton's study had some important methodological flaws. First, the experienced well-being metric they used was on a binary yes-no scale instead of being a range of options. They simply asked if the participant had experienced positive affect or not, rather than providing a range of intensity. This led to some odd data, where over 70% of responses from the lowest earning group were already reporting the highest possible level of positive affect. There was little nuance in terms of how positive participants really felt, since it was all or nothing. Second, the Experienced Wellbeing Survey asked participants how they felt yesterday, as opposed to in the present moment. This retrospective view, therefore, was reliant on the participants' memory, which is suboptimal. Third, the researchers had participants grouped into income brackets, where the highest level was a household income of $120,000 and above. This meant that everyone above $120,000, equivalent to about $175,000 today, was considered identical, which does not provide a very precise understanding of how money and well-being are associated at the high end of the income distribution. Killingsworth's study aimed to address these flaws. He recruited 33,000 employed and working-age adults in the United States who were randomly notified to provide reports on their well-being via their smartphone. Overall, he got 1.7 million well-being measurements. He had a wide range of household income, with his highest bracket being $625,000 and above, a group in which he had over 400 participants. For evaluative well-being, he asked the question, overall, how satisfied are you with your life? On a continuous response scale. For experienced well-being, he asked the question, how do you feel right now? This was also on a continuous response scale, unlike the prior study. He also tracked both the occurrence and intensity of specific positive and negative emotions. Because it was collected on smartphones, all the data was real-time, so there was no reliance on participant memory. For evaluative well-being, Killingsworth's result was similar to that of Kahneman and Deaton. Life satisfaction rose clearly with income. However, the striking difference was that experienced well-being also rose with income. Unlike the prior study, which showed a plateau after $75,000, Killingsworth's data showed that larger incomes were robustly correlated with greater happiness, and that there was no point in the data after which the effect hit a plateau. This association held true for both positive and negative emotions too. Positive feelings like confidence, interest, and inspiration all rose with income, while negative feelings like fear, anger, and sadness all fell with income. How do we account for such contradictory results? The authors of both papers did something rather unusual, which is to come together and try to reconcile their studies in what is called adversarial collaboration. Their primary conclusion was that the methodology of Kahneman and Deaton's paper was indeed suboptimal. In particular, the binary question to measure experienced well-being hid the underlying relationship. Killingsworth's results better represented the relationship between money and well-being. So, is the takeaway that money is correlated with both higher life satisfaction and higher happiness? As with most things, it's not quite that simple. Based on these two studies, it's unambiguous that more money is associated with higher life satisfaction. This association isn't trivial either. In Killingsworth's study, the lowest income group of $15,000 had a mean life satisfaction of 57 out of 100. Meanwhile, the highest income group of $625,000 and above had a mean life satisfaction of 72 out of 100, 15 percentage points higher. While this is not controlled at all for other factors like age, gender, or education, it suggests that there is meaningful variation with the amount of money people make. And this makes intuitive sense when you take a step back and evaluate your overall life. Your financial stability is a pretty easy and sensible measuring stick, since it tends to reflect your professional endeavors and your ability to afford both necessities and luxuries in life. Whether you're earning $15,000 a year or $625,000, you have a pretty good sense of where that places you relative to others, which can offer some perspective on how to rank your life. The story is a bit more complicated for experienced well-being. Based on Killingsworth's findings, it's also clear that more money is associated with higher happiness. However, the effect is noticeably smaller than that for life satisfaction. Mean experienced well-being for the lowest income group of $15,000 is 61 out of 100, but for the highest income groups, earning $625,000 and above, it is only 66 out of 100, a 5-point difference. And once Killingsworth controls for things like age and gender, this effect shrinks even more. Killingsworth himself characterizes the relationship between income and experienced well-being as statistically significant yet weak, with a correlation of 0.9. half the size of the correlation between income and evaluative well-being. This is not to mention that for both happiness and life satisfaction, the effect of more money slows down as people earn higher and higher incomes. This is because researchers model income on a log scale, which means that it requires ever larger increases in income to achieve a uniform increase in well-being. What this means in practice is that two households earning $30,000 and $90,000 would be expected to have the same difference in well-being as between two households earning $90,000 and $270,000, which in turn would be expected to have the same difference in well-being as between two households earning $270,000 and $810,000, and so on. This implies that extra income matters less and less to both experienced and evaluative well-being the more you have. All told, income proved only a modest predictor of both experienced and evaluative well-being. While money was associated with greater well-being, the effect size was not large, especially for happiness. Perhaps the most important takeaway was that any amount of money in Killingsworth's study was sufficient to have a good chance at both happiness and life satisfaction. By the same token, no amount of money could guarantee it. There were happy people with low incomes and miserable people who earned quite large salaries. Based on these two observational studies, it seems that money still has a role to play in well-being, but its exact contours are a bit fuzzy. In particular, because these are observational studies, we still cannot say anything about the causal effect of money on well-being. All we can say is that things are associated. To try to answer the causal question, we'll turn to experimental studies. Stay tuned. Hi there, this is Henry, the founder of Sycamore. At Sycamore, we are out to help people better understand, manage, and practice well-being. If you've enjoyed this series so far, please consider sharing it with a friend, and visit us at trysycamore.com to learn more. Thanks again.